Hello everyone, we'll be starting the session now. Anissa, you have the platform.
All right, thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or also good evening. My name is Anissa. I'm the chair of Standing Committee on One Health in IVSA. And today I'm happy to finally conduct the One Health webinar in collaboration with Asia regional team. And uh, maybe I will give like some short opening speech. So as we know that One Health has the missions to share the One Health message to the students worldwide, especially the veterinary student, as we are a veterinary students organizations. And I believe that One Health is let everyone to contribute, and also uh, everyone has the role. So I would love to give this opportunity to help the IVSM members, especially to more to understand more regarding about One Health. And yeah, I'm very happy to have these events, this webinar together with regional team. And the next one, I will give the platform to Nidhi and share their thought regarding these events.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible clearly. Fingers crossed. So, my name is Nidhi Khonekar, and I'm the Asia Regional Representative. And I'm very happy to have this collaboration with the Standing Committee on One Health in having these webinars with wonderful speakers. I still remember I had approached Dr. Laura, I think months back, but unfortunately, I couldn't have her event back then. But here we are today. I'm having her here, and I'm super excited to have her speak and enlighten all the Asian members of IVSA. And Dr. Prejit, you have been really motivating and a source of light, I would say, like a lighthouse. You've been always there to help us in IVSA. So thank you for accepting our invitation to both of our speakers. And let's start with our sessions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Nidhi. So, without further ado, I will start the sessions. So, well, all the audience, for the first sessions, we will have the webinar with Dr. Laura Kahn. So, our topic, we will be talking about a One Health analysis of food safety and security, antimicrobial resistance, and climate change in the 21st century. So, first of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Laura. So, Dr. Laura is a physician, policy researcher, educator, and author. So, for almost 20 years, she was a research scholar at Princeton University. In 2006, she published Confronting Zoonosis, Linking Human and Veterinary Medicine in the CDC journal Emerging Infectious Disease that helped launch on One Health Initiative, which is a global effort to promote the One Health concept that human, animal, plant, environmental, and ecosystem health are linked. She is the author of two books, Who in Charge, Leadership During Epidemics, Bioterror Attacks, and Other Public Health Crises. The second edition published in 2020 by Prager Security International, and One Health and the Politics of Antimicrobial Resistance published in 2016 by Johns Hopkins University Press. In June 2020, she launched her Coursera course, Pets, Ducks, and Pandemics, an introduction to One Health policy, which has over 6,100 students enrolled from around the world. So I think I will recommend you to join the course in Coursera next after this event maybe. So let me greet Dr. Laura. Good morning, Dr. Laura.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And let me share my screen with you. I'm truly delighted to be able to speak with all of you today. Can you see my screen? Is it
Yes,
up?
Dr. Laura.
Okay,
We
terrific.
can share it. So I will let you to take the platform, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here to speak with you today, providing you with a One Health analysis of food safety and security, antimicrobial resistance, and climate change in the 21st century. I think it's important that we recognize that agriculture is the foundation of civilization, and climate change threatens agriculture and food security. Antimicrobials are the foundation of modern medicine, and antimicrobial resistance threatens antibiotic use and food safety, as well as modern medicine itself. Just a few definitions. Food security means no hunger. Food safety means no foodborne illness. And when I talk about antimicrobial resistance today, I'm going to refer strictly to bacteria, although you can also have viral resistance to antivirals, as well as parasitic resistance. So lots of organisms can develop resistance, but in this talk, I'm going to talk about bacteria. So hopefully most of you have heard the term One Health. The concept, very simply as I define it, is that human, animal, plant, environmental, and ecosystem health are linked. And this concept then provides a very useful framework for examining and addressing the complex issues that I will be talking about today. If we are to develop effective policies to address issues such as spillover events or antimicrobial resistance, we need to look at the root causes. And I think it's important that we recognize that we interact with our environment every day by inhaling air, drinking water, and ingesting the plants and animals that we call food. Our One Health Initiative website, which is at the bottom of the screen, has been serving as a global repository for all news and information pertaining to One Health since 2008. So please visit it and tell your friends and colleagues to visit it. So now I've developed a multidimensional One Health matrix that I use as the framework for examining the issues that I will be talking about today. One of the dimensions uses the One Health factors, looking at humans, animals, plants, environments, and ecosystems. Second dimension are the complexity factors that provide scale, and that includes the microbial or cellular, the individual and the population levels. The third dimension is the political, social, and economic factors, and that can be represented by political borders at the local, regional, national, or international and global levels. There can even be a fourth dimension, if you will, and that's time. But I will not visualize that here. I have a three-dimensional Rubik's Cube. There's not 4 dimensions available to illustrate all 4 of them. Now, looking at this cube in 2 dimensions, you can have an intersecting grid, and you can then use these different grids to develop your framework in a very concise, systematic, and organized way. I define environments as the abiotic, the soil, water, or air aspects of defined geographic areas, and ecosystems as the biotic interactions, the microbial flora and fauna within defined geographic areas. So in this talk, I'm going to do a One Health analysis, then looking at these different factors in an organized way, looking at domestic and terrestrial livestock, plants, and then environments and ecosystems, and finally at the political, social, economic factors, looking at the global demand for meat. So in other words, let's look at this from a satellite perspective, a One Health satellite perspective, if you will. So our first One Health analysis, looking at humans and their domesticated livestock at the global level. Currently, we have almost 8 billion humans on the planet. And according to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, we have around 30 billion terrestrial food animals. Humans and their domesticated animals constitute about 96 to 98% now of the global terrestrial mammalian biomass. And this is not a genetically diverse grouping. Most of the diversity is in the wildlife, but there's very little wildlife left. This is from 2000. There's even less wildlife today than there was 22 years ago. Broiler chickens are a sign of the human reconfigured biosphere. Combined, the broiler chicken's mass exceeds all other birds on Earth, with a standing population of almost 23 billion birds. And as the famous children's book author Tara Gomi writes, all animals eat, so everyone poops. And together, humans, almost 8 billion humans, 30 billion food animals, we produce around 4 trillion kilograms of fecal matter each year, according to this article published in Nature Sustainability back in 2018, estimation of global recoverable human and animal fecal biomass, an extremely important paper. To put 4 trillion kilograms into perspective, that would, oops, sorry, what did I just do? 1 minute. Okay, can people see that now? To put this into perspective, it would fill around 1.6 million Olympic-sized swimming pools, or to put it another way, it would bury the entire surface area of Los Angeles and New York under 6 feet of fecal matter, and we are producing increasing amounts each year. And now it's not letting me, oops, hold on a second, okay. In terms of human fecal matter, around 673 million people defecate outdoors. According to Statistica, these are the countries where people are still openly defecating. There are many parts of the world where people don't have access to basic sanitation. And so the more that you put fecal matter into your environment, the greater the risk of disease. We generally focus on human fecal matter, but animal fecal matter is actually, there's a lot more of it. But we don't quite know what's being done with all of it. So there was this one study done in 2014 looking at the global assessment of manure management policies and practices. This study looked at 34 countries, their national policies related to manure management, and they found that they might have policies on animal manure, but enforcement is generally weak, lack of coordination between the different ministries, and enforcement was found to vary across the surveyed countries. This isn't an issue solely in developing countries. Here in the United States, we have concentrated animal feeding operations, also known as CAFOs, where thousands or hundreds of thousands of animals are raised in densely populated enclosed areas. There is no federal agency that collects consistent data on these CAFOs, but some of the large operations can produce more than 1.6 million tons of manure a year, and that can be even more waste than some US cities produce annually. This study was done in 2008, and there hasn't really been one done since. There are pathogens in human fecal matter, and I've highlighted them all here. These are the bacterial pathogens. There's, of course, plenty of viral pathogens as well as others. There's viruses, bacteria, parasitic cysts, and eggs that are in human fecal matter. And there's plenty of pathogens in animal fecal matter, although there's few studies examining the pathogens in animal fecal matter, but these are the bacteria. There's certainly helminths, protozoa viruses, and microsporidia. And this was an important paper looking at the exposure of animal fecal matter and its impact on human health. And it's really quite surprising how few studies there are looking at that very issue, given that 30 billion food animals are producing 80% of the 4 trillion kilograms of fecal matter that's produced each year. So, in terms of all of this fecal matter that is being produced, it's contaminating our soils, it's contaminating our water, it's contaminating our crops. In 2015, the World Health Organization released a report estimating the global burden of foodborne illnesses. Around 1 in 10 people are sickened by food each year, and of the 600 million people who get sick, around 420,000 die. Children under the age of 5 make up 40% of the cases, and it's not surprising that the vast majority of the cases, causing around 550 million illnesses, 230,000 deaths, are coming from these diarrheal disease agents that are coming from fecal matter, both human and animal fecal matter. So that then brings me to my second One Health analysis looking at plant health. We have on the planet around 50,000 edible plants, but just 3 of them, rice, maize, also known as corn, and wheat, provide 60% of the world's food energy intake. Plants need light, carbon dioxide, water, soil. They require nutrients, and most importantly, some macronutrients, including nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those nutrients are often found in fecal matter. You may or may not have heard of the Green Revolution. Dr. Norman Borlaug was a plant pathologist, and in the 40s, he worked for the Rockefeller Foundation to try to improve wheat harvests. He developed new wheat varieties with disease resistance adapted to different growing conditions. And these new wheat varieties and crop management practices spread from Mexico to Asia, and South America, becoming known as the Green Revolution. For his efforts, he won the Nobel Prize for averting widespread hunger. The Green Revolution was astonishing in the increase in cereal production and yield to meet population demand, all using about the same amount of land. So we asked much more of the soil, and we got a lot more. So the global land was spared as we increased our cereal yield. But it came with costs. Again, here's cereal yield in 2018. You can see in many countries, particularly in the United States and China, increases in different grains to feed people. But there were problems with the Green Revolution. Asking so much more of the soil required intensive farming practices, and that led to soil erosion, water shortages, micronutrient deficiencies, a dependency on chemicals such as fertilizer and pesticides, and a loss of control over seeds. And it required genetically engineered crops, also known as genetically modified organisms, which led to considerable political opposition. Now, because we needed so much intensive inputs into the soil to increase yield so dramatically, we switched from using manure. In 1961, manure there was about 1.5 times more manure used than synthetic fertilizer. But in 2019, 4 times more synthetic fertilizer was used than manure. And this has important implications in the environment that I will talk about in the next few slides. So the question then is if manure is not being used as fertilizer, then what's being done with it? Now, there are some benefits to using manure. There's important components of manure that improves soil health. And so you can look at the different benefits and costs of manure versus fertilizer. That brings me to my third One Health analysis, looking at environments and ecosystems at the international and global level. Climate change threatens agriculture, and agriculture worsens climate change. So to really understand climate change, we need to look at the geologic timeline of the temperature of the planet. This is the Paleozoic era, around during the Cambrian explosion of life. The planet was very different from what it is now. Yes, it was very hot, but there was no life on the land. The land was barren. There was a lot of life in the oceans. The planet has gradually cooled with time. We reached the Pliocene era and the Pleistocene era, which is the Ice Age. And much of the planet was covered with thick sheets of ice. And then around 10,000 years ago, the planet started warming. And around 10,000 years ago, we entered the Holocene era, which is where we live now. And the temperature of the planet stayed on this baseline, the Holocene baseline, that has been remarkably stable, relatively predictable. And the entire reason why we've been able to have agriculture is because we've had the temperature on the planet on this baseline. So we could then have farmers predict when to plant the seeds and when to harvest. You had relatively mild weather to enable crops to grow. If you want to learn more about that, I highly recommend this book, Timefulness: How Thinking Like a Geologist Can Help Save the World. But you really do need to think like a geologist to truly understand climate change, because the time periods are so vast. Now, generally, food security was pretty reliable when on this baseline, but when you deviated off the baseline, such as here during the Little Ice Age, the baseline dipped below the baseline by about 1 degree, and you got the Little Ice Age, I'll talk about in the next slide. We've now increased about 1 degree above the baseline, and we are starting to see the impact of climate change now. So the Little Ice Age lasted from about 1300 to 1850, and the planet was a lot colder. We don't know what caused the Little Ice Age, but the Thames in London froze over, and they had frost fairs lasting for a couple of hundred years. The artists documented for us what the Little Ice Age looked like. You had frozen wastelands in Flanders, ice skating in Rotterdam. But most importantly, the Little Ice Age was noted for crop failures, bread riots, famine, and wars. You can read about the Little Ice Age in this book by Jeffrey Parker called Global Crisis, and in this book by Philippe Blom, Nature's Mutiny. it was not a good time to be alive. Again, there was a lot of crop failures and famine. We have world hunger now in 2020, according to the World Food Program. There's plenty of countries where there's still food insecurity. And even in the United States, which is uniformly blue, we still have a lot of hungry people, and we are starting to see the impact of climate change on crops. But of course, countries closer to the equator are certainly seeing the impacts now of climate change on crops. So that brings me now to manure and to synthetic fertilizers, because they emit greenhouse gases. And manure and the synthetic fertilizers are major sources of methane and nitrous oxide, which are far more potent than carbon dioxide at trapping heat. So carbon dioxide traps heat and it can last in the environment for 1,000 years. Methane will trap about 28 times more heat than carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide will trap 265 times more heat than carbon dioxide. So these two are extremely potent greenhouse gases, and agriculture is a major emitter of them. So addressing these in agriculture would do a lot to help reduce some of the short-term greenhouse gas emissions that we are emitting now. Just to understand how coal was formed, before the dinosaurs, there were giant plants and swamps. They would die and they would get buried under dirt, and dirt and pressure would turn these dead plants into coal. Similarly, with petroleum and natural gas, the tiny sea plants and animals would die and get buried and form oil and gas. So basically what we are burning is decomposed plants and animals into the environment, into the atmosphere, when we are burning coal, petroleum, and gas. And that is just really not good for civilization. So in the US, our methane emissions, manure management, again, we produce lots of methane. We produce a lot of manure, and that's producing about 9% of our methane emissions. Enteric fermentation, or cow burps, produces a whopping 27% of methane emissions from the United States. In terms of nitrous emissions, nitrous oxide emissions, now recall nitrous oxide is 265 times more potent than carbon dioxide at trapping heat. Manure management, around 5% of the nitrous oxide emissions. Agricultural soil management, 74%. So agriculture then contributes around 36% of methane emissions, almost 80% of nitrous oxide emissions. That is huge. And that is just in the United States. In terms of, let me just switch gears a little bit and talk about antimicrobial resistance, because that's tied in with all of this manure as well. Now, for a long time, we didn't know what goes on underneath the soil, and scientists came up with a very clever strategy of extracting DNA directly from the soil using a science called metagenomics. And when they did that, they were shocked to discover that antimicrobial resistance genes appear to be ancient and everywhere, and that they are naturally occurring. So, so by our widespread production of all of this manure, we are adversely impacting what's called the global resistome through our widespread poor sanitation, indiscriminate antibiotic use in both humans, animals, and crops, untreated human and animal waste in the environment, leading to land and water contamination and the spread of resistant microbes and genes by wildlife. In terms of environmental fecal waste, there was a couple of very interesting studies that were done. One was done, published in, this was published in, let's see, I forget which journal this was. I believe it was The Lancet. They studied global antibiotic consumption from 2000 to 2010. And they found that, that the countries with the highest per capita consumption of antibiotics were Australia and New Zealand, which is really surprising because why would Australia and New Zealand have some of the highest antibiotic consumption? Well, then if you look at the maps from this estimation of global recoverable human and animal fecal biomass, that I had mentioned earlier in the talk, well, Australia and New Zealand have some of the highest animal to human ratios. They have a lot more sheep than they do people. And so when you look at the ratio, the number of animals to humans is very high and they produce a lot of fecal matter. And the question is environmental fecal matter then making people sick and leading to more antibiotic use? I don't know, that's pure speculation on my part, but I think it's really important to investigate whether all of the animal manure in one's environment is making people sick and leading to higher antibiotic use. That's something that should be a global priority to investigate. Animal manure is a potential hotspot for antibiotic resistance, as this paper in Veterinary Sciences looked at and found that there's a lot of disease, horizontal gene transfer events that can go on in animal manure. That now brings me to the fourth One Health analysis, looking at the political, social, economic factors at the global level, looking at food security. Food security is the foundation of civilization. Again, agriculture leads to food security, and it means no hungry people, built on three pillars: food availability, access or affordability, and food use. In terms of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, food security or zero hunger is so important that they list it as number 2. But One Health can be applied to many of these Sustainable Development Goals. It's instrumental for good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation, climate action, life below water, life on land. All of these things are, even sustainable cities and communities, all of them are affected by having good One Health. There are political implications of food insecurity when food prices become too high or when food becomes unavailable. Civil society breaks down and people begin to riot. So it's in political leaders' best interest to make sure that their populations are fed. So that then brings us to meat consumption. Eating meat is a norm throughout the world. It's interesting to point out that of all the countries around the world, the one with the highest fraction of vegetarians is actually India, where around 40% of the population is vegetarian, and I'll talk a bit about that more in a bit. There are pros and cons to eating meat. The pros: meat provides important micronutrients such as vitamin B12 and iron. There's evidence we evolved into modern humans because we hunted, cooked, and ate meat. Eating meat's an integral part of many religions and cultures. On the other hand, the cons: meat is not essential if you supplement the diet with vitamin B12 and other vitamins and minerals. Eating meat increases zoonotic spillover risks. And raising domesticated animals and or hunting wild animals contaminates environments with all the manure, disrupts ecosystems, and reduces biodiversity. Global meat production has been increasing since the 60s to meet global demand, been increasing dramatically. And as I had mentioned, eating meat is the norm almost everywhere except for India. India has the largest percentage of vegetarians in the world. It is possible to change national dietary preferences, but it requires cultural and societal change, which is not easy to accomplish. There are Americans who are cutting back on meat consumption, and some of the reasons why they're cutting back are health concerns, concerns for the environment, as well as food safety and animal welfare. So let me now sum up some of these findings of this One Health analysis. Humans and their domesticated animal populations are growing and producing increasing amounts of fecal matter each year. Animals produce about 80% of the global fecal matter, but we generally ignore this issue. Both human and animal fecal matter contain many pathogens, but sanitation systems are only designed to process human waste, not animal waste. There's little oversight then of manure management in many countries, not only in middle and low income countries, but in affluent countries like the US, where there's very little oversight. Plant health is essential because we all eat plants. They need these nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which are contained with manure, but synthetic fertilizer use predominates, and high nitrogen synthetic fertilizer is contributing to a lot of the nitrous oxide, which is worsening climate change. Manure management and agricultural soil management emit methane and nitrous oxide. Both are potent greenhouse gases. Not only that, but manure risks contaminating the global resistome, which is worsening global antimicrobial resistance. Together, all of these findings impact food safety and the practice of medicine, as well as food security and the continuation of agriculture. So what can we do? Well, the UN General Assembly met in 2016 to talk about antimicrobial resistance, and they recognized that a One Health approach is important. And the World Health Organization developed a model global action plan for antimicrobial resistance, and they did include the importance of reducing the incidence of infection through effective sanitation, hygiene, and infection prevention measures, but they make no mention anywhere of manure management and its impact on ecosystems. And that is a major oversight, because until you include animal manure, you are never going to make any headway on antimicrobial resistance. In the Paris Climate Agreement, they recognize the need to reduce greenhouse gases, but unfortunately they did not address agriculture's contributions of methane and nitrous oxide. There is the Coronivia joint work on agriculture, where they do recognize the importance of agriculture. But as of yet, there is still no agreements, and the recent COP26 meeting in Glasgow, they really made no advances in terms of reducing any greenhouse gas, much less agriculture. There are strategies to reduce methane and nitrous oxide emissions. In manure management, you can have what are called methane digesters that capture and convert the emissions into renewable energy. In terms of agricultural soil management, you want to avoid the over-fertilization of soils. Use low nitrogen, not high nitrogen fertilizer. Use drip agriculture, no tilling soil. When you till the soil, you release the nitrous oxides. So there are strategies to reduce these emissions, but as of yet, there's been no effort to make that a global policy. So in sum, then, we must restore our beautiful planet. One Health recognizes that life is interconnected. The One Health matrix analysis has revealed the microbial connections between food safety and security, antimicrobial resistance, and climate change. So what must we do? Well, I applaud all of you for having this webinar to discuss these issues. And we must spread the word through One Health education, research, policy development, and outreach. My course, Bats, Ducks, and Pandemics, an Introduction to One Health Policy, is available free and online. It was mentioned earlier, so please visit it, enroll, and tell your friends and colleagues to enroll as well. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues of the One Health Initiative team. We were co-founded in 2006, our website established in 2008. And finally, I want to thank you all for your time and attention, and I'm happy to take any questions. So with that, I will stop sharing. Let me see, how do I do that? Stop sharing my screen. Let's see. Was I able to do that? Am I still sharing my screen?
I think you already stopped your screen sharing, Dr. Laura. Well,
Okay.
thank you very much for very interesting explanations. Especially, I want to give highlight to the manure management, because it's very new perspective personally for me, because I'm sure not everyone realized that it's important to be managed. And yes, maybe I can start to ask some question from our participant. Also, I want to remind to all the participants, kindly share your questions in the chat box. While waiting for the questions, I will read from our form registration. All right. Wait a minute. All right. Okay, maybe the first question is, what action can veterinarian do as a medial bridge between human society and animals? And then we have to care about both the human interest and also the animals' interest. How we can find the balance of those interests? I think you can answer first, Dr. Laura.
Yes, thank you. Well, veterinarians play an absolutely critical role in all of this because you're taking care of the animals. Certainly you advocate for the animals, and you have to highlight the impact that the animals have in all of our lives, and highlight the role that animal manure potentially plays in spreading human disease. In many parts of the world, again, there are sanitation systems that only address human fecal matter, not animal fecal matter. People need to be educated that animal fecal matter can make them sick. And that's not going to be something that the human physician is going to be thinking about. So I think teaching people that, cleaning up after their animals, washing their hands well is absolutely essential for reducing the spread of disease. So all of the veterinarians play a very important role in this, and as well as animals receive antibiotics. You know, it's not just humans that are getting antibiotics. So again, the role of antimicrobial resistance is an important one in both humans and animals, and plants actually get antibiotics too. We generally ignore that, but a lot of crops, they're pouring antibiotics on them like they're water. So, and since antimicrobial resistance is in the environment, naturally occurring, we need to recognize that if we're going to make any headway on this problem.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Laura. We have a question from Keisuke. So when doing management of manure, does it also include like pet's fecal matter as well as the livestock fecal?
Yes, well, pet fecal matter, livestock fecal matter, all of it needs to be cleaned up and needs to be processed. And we need to figure out how best to manage that, to reduce all of the fecal matter in our environment. You know, again, if there's human fecal matter and animal fecal matter in the environment, then your risk of getting sick is much, much higher. You need to, you know, have sanitation for both human and animal fecal matter.
All right, like all our matters. All right, maybe I want to, you know, ask your opinions regarding in the climate change issue. We also talk about like the production of red meat, for example, like kettles,
Right.
is also contributing in like carbon footprint that leads to the climate change that we are facing right now. So as far as I know that a lot of researchers also want to make like a green farm or like more sustainable farm. Do you think it will be the answer of our question regarding the, you know, like cattle's problems in climate change, or do you think we need to be like all vegans? I want to know your opinions regarding that.
Right. Well, I think, I mean, in an ideal world, we would all be vegetarian, but I think we need to be realistic, and people eat meat. You know, we are omnivores, we're not vegetarian. The only primate that's strictly vegetarian are gorillas. And gorillas, if you look at the physiology, the anatomy and physiology of gorillas compared to humans, they've got these enormous guts and they spend the entire day digesting their low energy food. And that's just not what humans are. You can have a fine life as a vegetarian. I'm not, you know, denying that. But I think most, you know, the rule is eating meat, not the exception. For better or worse, we have to recognize that. And the demand is increasing. So I think given those circumstances, we need to develop strategies to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from enteric fermentation, cow burps. There is some research going on. We need more figuring out how to reduce the contribution of methane, because that's a very potent greenhouse gas, as well as all of the manure that's, you know, releasing methane and nitrous oxide into the environment. We need to figure out the best way to manage it, not only from a greenhouse gas emission perspective, but antimicrobial resistance, food safety, and food security. It's all tied together because it's all microbial. We live in a microbial world. We need to figure out how to live in it better. Our bodies are mostly microbial. So the sooner we recognize all of that, the microbial connections in all of this, the better off we will be. And, you know, as I said, veterinarians play a very critical role in all of this because you see the connections. You're taking care of the animals. So you play an extremely important role in helping to spread the word, to educate the public and the policymakers, because they don't understand it, they don't know. And that's really the only way we're going to make headway on this.
Well, Maybe last question from us, Dr. Laura. All right. We have this comment from Nazira. Shouldn't we advocate to lessen meat consumption by using substitutes for meats like Beyond Meat food products and multivitamins?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, people don't need to eat meat with every meal. You can certainly drastically reduce meat consumption. And in fact, the healthiest people don't eat that much meat. And I talk about that in my course, Bats, Ducks, and Pandemics, in terms of human nutrition. That, the people who eat high meat diets are actually not the healthiest. The people who eat just a little bit of meat are actually healthier than those that eat a lot. So you don't even need to use the meat substitutes. And to be honest, some of these meat substitutes, the ingredients in them are not that healthy that in themselves. They contain a lot of saturated fats. So just cutting back meat, eating more vegetables and fruits and nuts is a lot healthier for you.
Okay. Last questions maybe from us, Dr. Laura. As you know, what you said before, like it's our role, our responsibility to share this maybe like knowledge to the policymaker. So as students, we also try to advocate as a youth. And do you have like any special message for us? Like how as students we can contribute in One Health and especially advocating this message?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I think having meetings like this in your local community, writing to the local newspapers, communicating through social media, outreach in your local libraries, giving talks to the public, finding the types of venues that public pay attention to, whether through religious leaders, talking with them, having them help spread the message, finding those venues to educate the public. People like to listen to students. You have a lot of legitimacy, credibility. So, you have a lot of leverage then. Meet with your political leaders. Make appointments to talk with them. When I was a medical student, we had legislative day where we all took the train to Washington, D.C. to talk with our legislators. So you can certainly do things like that, both locally, regionally, and nationally, to meet with your political leaders to talk with them about some of these issues that are important. Until they hear from you, they don't know what's important. So that's why it's so important to be politically engaged.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Laura. It gives like new spirit for us to more advocate our idea, our patient, especially in One Health. Maybe that's the last question for us. We are very honored to have the opportunity to discuss and learn directly from you in this opportunity. I would like to continue the event. Thank you very much for attending our invitation, Dr. Lara. Hope you have a nice day today.
Thank you so much. My pleasure, and best of luck on all of your endeavors. I applaud you. So thank you again.
Bye-bye. We hope to see you in other opportunity, Doctor.
Of course. Take care.
Take care. All right. Well, to all audience, I would love to continue our sessions. And for the second sessions, we will be lead or moderate with Mariam. I will greet her first. Hi, Mariam. Are you ready? Hi, Mariam. We still cannot hear your voice. Sorry, we are waiting for Mariam first. All right, all right. Maybe to all the participants, you can directly share your questions in our chat box. And feel free to ask any questions because we would love to have a very great discussions. And it is a great opportunity to, cure your curiosity. Thank you. Oh, while we are waiting for Mariam, I want to share regarding the One Health Awareness Month that is in January. So Standing Committee on One Health has like some series regarding the Wizard of Oz. So it's talk about like One Health and many perspective of One Health. So I recommend you to try to check in our social media, in our Facebook or Instagram, and also LinkedIn. We share like uh, One Health in a creative way. And I hope you like how we try to tell the story of One Health. Thank you, Nazira. Because like SCOH has a very great team members, and yeah, we are lucky to have them.
Anisa, Mariam is having a little bit of a mic problem. Could you please continue for her?
All right, all right. I would love to. No worries, Mariam. Okay, don't get bored of me, guys. So I will also moderate the sessions with Dr. Prejit. I hope I'm not mispronounced. All right. So let's continue to the next sessions. Before I introduce our speakers, I would love to greet Dr. Prejit first. Good evening, I think, to Dr. Prejit. Are you with us, Doctor?
Yeah, I'm well with you. Good evening.
All right. Thank you very much, Doctor. All right, before you start, I would love to introduce you to our participants. So today we will discuss about One Health and emerging zoonosis with Dr. Prejit. So Dr. Prejit is work as an assistant professor and head in the Department of Veterinary Public Health and officer in charge of Center for One Health Education, Advocacy, Research and Training, or cohort at Kerala Veterinary and Animal Science University in India. He holds a doctorate degree in veterinary public health. Dr. Prejit was involved in several short-term public health consultations in several countries like Turkey, United States, Italy, Austria, United Kingdom, Nepal, Bangkok, and Indonesia. He is a recipient of several awards such as GP Sen Endowment Award, Best Article Award, Best Research Paper Award, Young Scientist Award, Best Teacher Award, and Best Presenter Awards in several conferences. He was also awarded the Outstanding One Health Surveillance Award conferred during the annual conference of the International Society for Disease Surveillance held in Colorado, US. He is the course director of PG Diploma in One Health and PG certification in One Health Surveillance offered by KVASU. He is the advisor of International Journal of One Health. He is also the nominated spokesperson for ASEAN countries for commemorating the One Health Day event organized by One Health Commissions in US. He has published nearly 100 articles, book chapters, etc. in reputed journals and publishers, and has successfully guided several master veterinary science and diploma students. Whoa, she got like very a lot of award, and I'm sure she will be, has a very engaging sessions. So to Dr. Prejit, the time and floor is yours.
Thank you, Anissa. I'll just share the screen. Yes, Anissa, is it visible?
Yes, doctor. We can
Yeah,
see
thank you.
your screen.
Yeah, so let me thank at the outset the IVSA team, SCOH, Standing Committee of One Health, for inviting me for this beautiful webinar, the Panoramic One Health. It's an ideal theme also. So I'll be just roughly covering in just next half an hour on some of the concepts of One Health and what do you understand by emerging zoonoses, how are we supposed to tackle the emerging zoonoses, and why do we see a lot of emerging zoonotic diseases. But before we start, why are we talking more about One Health? So there is a recent survey which has been conducted by Global World Economic Forum. Okay, they usually conduct such surveys annually, and this is based on the perception of more than 1,000 global experts and leaders. So what they find is that over a period of 10 years, what we are going to face threats like climate action failure, extreme weather loss, extreme weather, biodiversity loss, infectious disease, human environmental damage, natural resource crisis. And so this all it goes like 1 to 10. So if you see all this nearly 10 threats what we see here, nearly 80% of those are related with environment. They are related with man, related with animals or the infectious diseases. So what I want to tell is that to address such threat what we are going to face in the next 10 decades, next 10 years, we need to have approach like One Health approach. That is, we need to have collaborations and multi-sectoral partnership to work to address these threats. Now, this is the latest definition given by One Health high-level expert panel. So One Health high-level expert panel comprises nearly around 26 members, and they are the ones who are going to advise, or rather, who are going to help the FAO, WHO, OIE, and United Nations Environment Program on implementing One Health approach in various countries. So here they have given the definition of One Health as it's an integrated, unifying approach that aims to sustainably balance and optimize the health of people, animals, and ecosystem. So basically what it does is that we are going to connect people who protect the human, animal, and environmental health. Then they'll be working by coordinating, communicating, and collaborating between each of their sectors, and in order to achieve the best health outcomes for the people, animals, plant, and the environment. So now coming to the topic, we all heard about zoonotic disease for the several. I think you all are veterinary students. So as a part of your curriculum, you all know that zoonoses are one of the important public health area which we need to address on. So, and basically it is defined as those diseases which are transmitted naturally between vertebrate animals and man. So if we have a look at the zoonotic profile in the world, nearly 60% of all infectious disease in humans.
Sorry, Dr. Prejit, did you change the slides? Because in the screen, the slides hasn't changed yet.
Okay, which slide is there showing currently?
It is still the first page.
Oh, sorry, it's actually I just changed it. I'll just again share it again. I'll go for screen share. I think that will be better. So just let me know if the screen is moving.
Yes, the screen is all great now.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I was talking about this this survey of Global Economic Forum, where you can see how these threats are highlighted there. These are the latest threats which we need to address using One Health approach. Then I was defining One Health. What do you understand by One Health? And now let's move on to what is zoonotic diseases and emerging zoonoses. So as I said, nearly 60% of all infectious diseases are zoonotic. And those which are reported recently, for the past couple of years, most of them are from the animal source, especially the wild animal sources, and nearly 75% are emerging zoonotic diseases. So by definition, it is basically a newly recognized or newly involved or a disease that has occurred previously but shows an increasing incidence or expansion in geographical area, host, and vector range. So why do we hear about zoonotic disease nowadays? What are the various factors which results in the emergence of various diseases? See, there are several factors. The first important one is, of course, the population growth. Population is on increasing trend. We have nearly 8 billion, the world population. But at the same time, the animal population is also at increasing trend. Why I say this? Because the growing demand for protein-rich diet. See, the population, when they are having more purchasing power parity, they try to have more protein-rich diet for their daily food intake. So as a result of which, what happens is that this animal industry is getting tremendous pressure to meet the growing food demand. Therefore, there is more and more intensive type of rearing, and to the extreme extent, it may go even to factory type of farming. But that's a secondary thing. But what we need have to remember is that there's a population explosion which is taking place. There is also a huge number of animal population also increasing, especially the birds. So what happens? We are staying the same land. So there is more interaction which is happening nowadays when compared to a couple of years back. So when there is more interaction, naturally there is chances of disease spillover from either the wild animal sources or the domestic animal sources to the human beings. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason is, of course, the climate change, which Dr. Laura has just spoke elaboratively on. We all know that there are certain purposes which we damage the land, that is human interventions which are damaging the planet. Like for example, cutting down trees. We go for deforestations in the name of development, in the name of converting this entire land into agrarian zone, etc. So this, what will happen is that the people or the wild animal which are living in those areas are slowly getting, they're not getting their own habitat to stay on. So they move into the areas where human are dwelling, which will result in again disease spillover to human beings. Apart from that, the unhygienic living conditions which is prevailing in most of the urban areas, the pollutions, either it is the air pollution, water pollutions, or whatever it could be. And another thing is, a couple of years back, a study has been done in Florida. What they've seen is that the sea turtle, which they usually lay egg in the sand bed. So based on the temperature of the sand bed, it decides whether the egg hatches out will be male or female. So that's why I just I mentioned there hot chicks and cool dudes, because if it is at a higher temperature, like more than 30 degrees Celsius, there are chances that the eggs hatch out are more females. But if it is at lower temperature, it will be, it's male, which is being hatching out. But over a couple of 7 years, they have seen 100% females egg are being hatching out from the sea turtle. So this indicates that, okay, the earth is getting warmer. Of course, that's an indicator. Secondly, over a period of time, there are chances that several species like this go under extinction, because of course they don't, if there is all females in the world, definitely there is no reproduction which is taking place, and ultimately we may have an extinction phase. It's just an indicator. It's not, as there are further research which needs to be done on this line. Well, another story is about the international travel and the current pandemic. We see people move from one part of the country to another in a very short notice. You all know that how these viruses are traveling from one place to another. Like for example, we have this COVID-19, we have the SARS in 2003. MERS, and so many emerging diseases. They have they don't need any passport or any visa. They can easily travel from any individual from one place to the another place. Likewise, we have this flying mammal, okay, this bats, they also carry many important viruses which are zoonotic. So they also fly from one place to another and carry the disease conditions. When it comes to the next factor, we have the microbial adaptation and change. Okay, again, while talking about this, we need to remember about certain important thing which Dr. Laura has mentioned, like we have this antimicrobial resistance. See, bacteria, they develop resistance against major antibiotics, as a result of which, whenever we give some antibiotics, we don't get the desired effect of infection control. So that is because the microbial is getting adapted to the change, getting adapted to whatever drugs which we are giving to kill them. Apart from that, we also heard about many things like, variants of concern. We are currently, in a place where there are so many cases of Omicron, so many cases of, COVID-19 variants I'm talking about, Omicron, Delta plus Beta. See, all these are variants of concern. Why we call them as variants of concern is because they are of concern, because they have higher infectivity, they are changed in the mutation. Means these are all because of mutations in the viruses, which results in a particular type of property which virus gains, and it can even cause more damage than the previous virus. Now, coming to the various factors you can see nowadays, what you see in 21st century, it could be vectors which are increasing as a result of climate change, the illegal wildlife trading which is taking place, the migration, the air travel, the climate change, the global trade industry, deforestations. See, all this results in what? The animals which carry some viruses. If at all wildlife is there, they may carry some viruses which may be dominant in them. They usually get spilled over to domestic animals and then ultimately to the humans. So spillover is one of the important take-home message which we have to remember about zoonotic diseases. Now, coming to the timeline, you can see this timeline briefly describes, like, right from the 1922 onwards, we have so many cases of different diseases like Spanish flu, H1N1, Nippa virus, SARS, Ebola, MERS, H1N1, and don't know what are the diseases we are going to face in near future. Well, this is see, basically, whenever we talk about any particular disease, we have to remember about the something called as a R0 or basic reproduction number. So that is, if I'm infected with the virus, I can transmit the disease to how many number of people, say suppose in a closed room. So in that cases, if you can see that there are certain diseases like measles can even transmit to 15 number of people in the room. SARS can transmit nearly around 1 to 3, but the fatality rate is more. What you see in the left hand side is the more fatality rate is more. MERS has highest number of fatality rate, but thank God that the transmissibility is relatively less. That is, it's less than 1. So in epidemiological study, if it is less than 1, it's said to be very much good for the people, because there's very less chance of the particular virus getting transmitted from one individual to the another. So currently COVID-19 is nearly around 2 to 4. In some countries it is nearly less than 2. In some countries it is more than 4 also. So yeah, so we should not think that this type of virus spill over from one particular species to human beings. Like in case of COVID-19, we don't know whether who is the intermediate host, whether it is transmitted directly from bats to human beings or there are any other intermediate hosts. But definitely we have so many animals and also playing a role in transmission of diseases. Now we can see this map which shows the hotspot for emerging zoonotic diseases. Those which are bright yellow in color are the ones which shows quite commonly there are some diseases, especially the emerging ones which have been reported. Of course, India shines bright there. It's mainly because because of the tropical forest rich. We are rich in forest areas. We have high number of mammals. Also, we have certain things which predisposes to many zoonotic diseases. Now, as a veterinary, future veterinarians or SC people complete the course, you have to remember one thing, like we being a veterinarian, we have to remember that our role lies in this intersectoral areas, where this human health and animal health are joined, or the ecosystem, or what you say, the environmental health joined with the animal health. So these are the areas where we need to intervene. That is the wildlife health, the One Health, or veterinary public health. So these areas we have a major role to play, not only the treatment of animals, but we have to play a major role in those areas. So I'll just give you one example of the situation where One Health approach is taken into practice, especially in my state in Kerala. So we have a disease called as Kaizenor forest disease. We call it as KFD in short. So KFD is one disease which is reported in our neighboring state for a couple of years, but recently it has been reported in our state also. So when it is reported in our state, what we did, so basically I'll give an idea about KFD. This disease is transmitted by uh, a nymphal stage of a tick called as Hemaphysalis spinigera. So for this nymph stage to carry the disease, it needs a rodent source, especially the wild rodents. So sometimes the monkeys as well as we human beings get exposed to this ticks from the wild rodents, and we get the disease. So it's usually the monkey, and from the monkeys to human, that's the usual pathway we get the disease in human beings, because these rodents transmit the disease to the monkeys, and monkeys, they have this acute fever, and they in search of water, because once they get high fever, they need a water sources. So in search of water, they go near the human habitations and they die there. So, and when people are walking in those areas, there are chances that this ticks comes out from the monkey's body and they infect the human beings. Likewise, there's a big blood source, that is the cattle. So they act as an important maintenance host for this particular virus. So I'll just illustrate to you. We at the left bottom, we have the monkeys and the rodents there. So there the monkey gets infected. It searches for water sources. It dies near the water source. And what happens is that immediately after the death, the ticks comes out on the body, and within 50 feet area, the ticks will move, especially the nymphal stages. You see, nymphal stages of the parasite is very active. You can just see his leg, it will keep on, just looking for any blood source, blood meal. So in that way, it can, if it sees a human beings, it immediately takes a blood meal from there and can transmit the disease. So now the One Health approach actually starts. So what happens in India or in Kerala? Once we get a case of monkey death, the forest department, they immediately make a call to the animal husbandry department. Okay, there is a case of monkey death reported in so and so place. Then the GPS is shared. The vets from the university as well as the animal husbandry department, they wear the PPE kit, go to the site where the monkey death is there, conduct the postmortem on site, take the lesions, take the important organs where diagnosis needs to be done. And the next step is I remember telling that, do you remember telling me about 50 feet distance? Yeah, 50 feet area is entirely fogged with some important insecticides like malathion dustings or something is done so that the ticks are under control and the carcass is immediately disposed in the fire. So if it is a forest area, we can go for controlled burning, but of course we need to make sure that this is a 50 feet radius area where the controlled burning is done, but you have to make sure that it does not go into a forest fire. Then we go for reporting the cases. We have social media groups where they are very much active, like, what are the things which is done. Then this people go and collect the ticks, and some people even apply tick lotions to the animals so that, okay, during the life cycle of the tick, it's nearly the November month, this the stagial egg becomes larva, becomes nymph. So at that stage, if you're able to control the tick population in the forest areas, then to a great extent we can control the disease. So this is how we have some pour-on preparations, flumethrin, etc., that can be given to the animals. Then we, our center cohort conducts awareness classes. We go to some households and we have some certain channels which conduct certain awareness programs. So yeah, over to a couple of examples of emerging diseases. One important one is avian influenza. Why I took avian influenza is because this is a disease where too much of One Health action has taken place. Why? Because see, we are all in a world where people consume a lot of egg or chicken. So whenever there's a case of avian influenza, humans are worried whether we can consume chicken or not. So basically, this viruses, of course, I'm not going to go into the theoretical things like that. We have several H and N combinations, H1 to H18 and N1 to N11 subtype. The natural reservoir is, of course, the water birds and waterfall. And this disease has emerged in India in 2006. But even before the disease has emerged, we had a certain action plan ready. The government of India has developed an action plan for containment of avian influenza, as well as the contingency plan for human cases of avian influenza. So these two documents were ready even before we had the first case of avian influenza. So that is actually a One Health approach. We need to have a standard operating procedures. We need to have certain documents where how particular disease has to be dealt when it comes in a particular country. Well, this is probably $1 million question, which is the species which has killed maximum number of human. If somebody is asking, it's not the snake, it's not the elephant, not etc. But I must say it's just the mosquitoes which has killed the maximum number of human beings. So a couple of mosquito-borne diseases. We have dengue fever. Dengue is basically a break-bone fever. Just the pain in the bone sleep is just as if we are breaking the bones. So that type of pain is there. But of course, there are seven stages of this disease. We have 4 different serotypes which are affecting the individuals. Serotype 1 to 4. Yeah, just like in certain other viruses, see, serotype 1 will not give any protection against serotype 2. Likewise, that is antibody. That is, it does not give a immunological protection. Rather, it will have a reverse effect. That is something called as antibody-dependent enhancement. So if I'm infected with serotype 1, say suppose tomorrow, the next serotype which has infected me is serotype 4 over a couple of 2 or 3 weeks, the condition will be more severe. It does not give any protection. It becomes more severe, and as it may result into dengue hemorrhagic fever as well as dengue shock syndrome. Likewise, another virus is chikungunya. This is a virus. Once we are infected with this viruses, we may have tremendous pain in joints, which make us, articulous pain will be there for a couple of months. So see, even if one particular country has no chikungunya cases, but if a particular patient travels from one part of the country to another, and if that country has the mosquito like Aedes mosquito, then definitely that country will become again a place for chikungunya. That is endemic. So it's based on the vectors. Vectors are important. They can transmit the disease. Another important thing is the West Nile fever. See, West Nile fever has an important story to tell as far as One Health is concerned. Uh, uh, this disease was first reported in America, in New York in 1999. But that time, when the disease was reported there was no, people were not doubting that case was West Nile. They were in fact thinking that this was a case of St. Louis encephalitis. So basically, St. Louis encephalitis was a disease which is quite commonly reported there. It's quite endemic there. So when the people noticed this case, especially in crows and humans, so they thought that, okay, this is a case of St. Louis encephalitis, and all the patients were treated accordingly. But there was a veterinarian who was placed in Bronx Zoo, New York. So what she observed is that there are certain birds in this in the zoo itself which were dying. That is, American birds which were dying due to the disease. But the same, like the birds like flamingos, etc. The same cage, birds from Europe or other part of the country were healthy enough, even though they were not getting the disease. So basically, what is our hypothesis is that if it is a new disease, naturally the American birds should die first. So it's not, I mean, it's not it's not susceptible to this infection. But it's the reverse thing is happening. So she thought that this could not be a case of St. Louis encephalitis. It should be a case of a new virus. And through her effort, all the samples were again tested, and it was found to be West Nile virus. So that's right. Certain cases like animal cases can be a sentinel event for the human disease conditions. So that's about West Nile. Then another disease is Zika virus. See, Zika virus, also reported in Uganda in 1947. But recently it is gaining importance because most of the countries cases are emerging nowadays. Even in India, we had a couple of cases last year. So basically, WHO declares a state called as PHEIC. What is PHEIC? Is Public Health Emergency of International Concern. So WHO has declared public health emergency in total 6 occasions. That is in 2009 for H1N1, 2013-14 for wild strain of poliovirus, then 2015 Ebola virus, 2018 again Ebola virus, 2015 it was Zika virus in Brazil. That is, you can see that there was a massive outbreak in Brazil. So likewise, and the last one is COVID-19 in 2020. So such cases are very important because they has a potential to become pandemic in no time. So one of the major issue with Zika virus is that those children, I mean the pregnant woman, whenever they deliver a baby, the baby will be born with microencephaly. Okay. SARS is another condition. So you all know that SARS is severe acute respiratory syndrome. So here, this was reported in Guangdong, China in the year 2003. And later on, it spread to many of the countries. You can see there. Yes. Then another case is MERS. MERS, see basically this type of pictorial representation gives you an idea like a virus is there. Virus goes and attacks the human domestic animals, either through a vector or from the wild animal sources. Then it goes to the human beings. The amplification takes place in the human beings. Then it goes to a global spread. So this is what truly happens in many emerging zoonotic diseases. So here in case of MERS, the intermediate host is the camel, dromedarian camel, and the humans get infected whenever they are exposed to these animals. And another major emerging zoonotic disease we have is Nippa virus. Nippa virus, it's belonging to the genus Nippa, and the fruit bats are one of the important source of the infection. And the pigs, as only the Malaysian outbreak, we have reported pigs as an important intermediate host. But later on in other countries, especially in India also, it's usually the bats, and even in Bangladesh, the bats and date palm swab. has been one of the major implications for causing the Nipah viruses. So yes, now coming to the final few parts, that is COVID-19, we have nearly around 389 million cases and 5 million deaths as of now. You can see the countries which are infected in red color are the ones which have lot many cases. So many variants of concerns are come from COVID-19. These are the dark blues are ones which shows Omicron cases in the world. More the darker it is, more is the case reported there, and the light blue ones are the Delta variants. So this particular disease, COVID-19 as an emerging zoonotic disease, has cost 10 trillion money in terms of economic analysis. If you have done so many emerging, even though it is just a case of one disease, it has a tremendous economic impact. So that's why we can't neglect such diseases. So whenever we have a One Health approach, then only we can actually control such diseases. And One Health approach is basically, it's a communication between the health and animal sector as well as the environment sectors, where all the three sectors come together and perform joint investigations. Whenever a case is reported, say suppose a bird which is sick and having respiratory infections, means the human health sector needs to be notified. Okay, then only they can go and act appropriately and take samples. So yes, so basically for any type of control of emerging zoonotic disease, we need to have a collaboration between animal and human sector. Surveillance is one of the beautiful word which we have to remember whenever we talk about zoonotic diseases, because only by surveillance we can able to know the actual scenario of the disease. Then you have to strengthen the laboratory diagnostic capacity. We need to share the laboratory network from one. I mean, the human health sector is good in one particular disease, like say leptospirosis, they have a good laboratory, means they need to share the laboratory facilities for the diagnosing the animal infections also, because then only we can control the disease in humans. Unless and until we know the source, then only we can control the disease. Then we have to go for infection management, vector control, social and behavioral interventions, and also preparedness and response capacity. So that's the thing about One Health. Whenever there's a case reported in an animal, so you can see the red one. The red one ends abruptly over here, but in current scenario, it goes up to the level and then ends there, because this we are not much bothered about the animal scenario. But once the animal scenario is under control, then naturally the red is the human outbreak. The human outbreak will be reduced. So control opportunity is very much possible whenever we talk about One Health. So to conclude, emerging zoonotic diseases are unpredictable. They are unprecedented. 70% of this disease are from animal origin. COVID-19 is of course a wake-up call for One Health approach because of the huge socio-economic impact. The cost of preventing further pandemics by protecting wildlife is equal to 2% of the financial damage caused by COVID-19. So we need to focus more on wildlife surveillance, because when we focus on that area, definitely many diseases can be understood well, can be controlled well. We need to invest on One Health, and we have to break the silos in medicine, go for networking. And of course, US $3 billion per year, if you spend for operating One Health, the benefit will be nearly $37 billion. So we need to change our attitude from egocentric to an ecocentric. That is, the human's position is one among the species, including trees and animals. So that's all. Visit our center, cohort, and we'll be happy to host you people. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Prejit. So the most interesting one, the last tagline is like, let's change the egocentric into ecocentric. That is very cool tagline for me. All right, maybe we move to question and answer session. So first of all, I also want to thank you for a very nice presentation. And then I will start to read the questions. So the first questions may be about. All right. So in your expertise in regard of this question is like, what are the epidemiological studies or programs are going on world level for the eradication of major disease, and maybe like how students can participate on it. Maybe if we try to translate these questions is like, what is our plan to preparing like the eradication of major disease, maybe like the COVID-19 or like future pandemics or future outbreaks in animals, and how students can contribute on this plan or strategy?
Well, it's a good question. The students are, the backbone for the next level control measures which needs to be adopted in any zoonotic diseases. Why I say is that because whenever we were taught about epidemiology and all, we were just given the superficial knowledge about epidemiology. We didn't include technology into the epidemiology. But now technology is one of the important factor for epidemiology. And you students are, right from your birth onwards, you are used mobile, you are used technology, you are well versed with, even some of you knows coding and things like that. So what I want to say is that whenever we talk about epidemiology, it's a modeling. See, whenever you think about, there are many softwares which are used in epidemiology. If you visit OIE website, there's something called as OIE Wahis. So they have, even in COVID-19, there are so many dashboards like the John Hopkins one and the WHO one. See, all these are beautiful dashboards wherein we just get to know the precise idea of what actually the disease is, how the disease, how the organism is transmitting from one place to another, what is the level of so certain things like, this needs in-depth knowledge. And for that we need to have certain softwares, like for example certain softwares like statistical tools like R. They have a tremendous application in epidemiology. So as a student, once you complete your BBSc, because I know BBSc is your DVM program is very tough. It involves a lot of studies material. But once you try to join some postgraduate program in epidemiology, it's one of the very good. It has a very good scope as far as this field is concerned. The public health field is concerned.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for the answer. Guys, I want to remind you, if you have any questions, kindly type in our chat box and I will read it to Dr. Prejit. While we are waiting for the question from our participants, maybe I want to ask your opinions in regard like nowadays, like you mentioned that technology play an important role in like epidemiology. So do you think how important is like as a future veterinary, we need to study like some maybe like statistical or like programming things, because little did I know that it's also help epidemiology to translate their data.
Yes, I think you definitely need to go into these areas, especially this artificial intelligence is the one which veterinarians have been less explored, but there are tremendous opportunities in that line. So these are areas, as being a student, you need to look into the opportunities like technology oriented approaches. For that, it's not tough actually. It's very easy. There are certain softwares which are already available. We have most of the lectures are available in YouTube also. If you don't have any other source to study, you can get all the informations even in just by typing keywords in YouTube. Okay, like epidemiological modeling, how to do, what are the softwares available in epidemiology. So it's a beautiful way we can learn actually in epidemiology. And because what exactly is needed of the hour is, because whenever there is a particular virus which is infecting an individual, the virus keeps on mutating. we don't know what is the next mutation which is going to happen. So if we have a repository of all this information, and if it is represented in a graph or in a map, things becomes very easy, because people nowadays have mobile, then they have an app, they can easily look it 24 hours, and it's available with you. So to go into this type of new courses, it's several universities are offering health informatics courses. Try to join in one or two. Even as a part of your program, you can learn by using certain mobile available YouTube or any other type of course material. Even WHO website has a lot of courses on this area. Free course. All these courses are free.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor. So yeah, I believe that a lot of students here are interested to learn more regarding this epidemiology. All right, we haven't got any new questions, but I will try to read out from our form registrations. All right, maybe like okay, we have questions from Nazira, Dr. Prejit. So, how much more prepared can be for a future pandemic?
Yeah.
Sorry, Nazira. All right. You can start to answer.
No, I got what Nazira want to talk about.
Yes.
Like, just wanted to know. She wanted to know: are we prepared for the future pandemic with the current scenario? Of course. See, future pandemic. Now we know the scenarios. Okay, we know how a pandemic creates an impact to the society. What are the role played by of course technology also. What is that role of technology in controlling the pandemic? So definitely we are prepared, because now we know that okay, there's something called as the virus, something called as a mutation variant of concern. Vaccines needs to be developed. Now with COVID cases also, we know that within 1 year we have developed a vaccine. So that much previously it was taking nearly 5 to 10 years to develop an ideal vaccines. So now we are prepared. Like, okay, next pandemic is started means the day 2 onwards they can start develop a vaccine. Just we need to know the viral sequences in the repository. Then we can play with the sequences and develop an ideal vaccine. So will be very much prepared. It's not the situations will not be the same in future.
All right. Thank you very much, Doctor. So, regarding like before we discuss like the zoonotic or emerging zoonosis, like from animals to human or from human to animals, but can you like elaborate more like about the case that disease or like an outbreak from human to animals? I mean, like we rarely heard regarding that case, right? Maybe do you have any experience on that, like the outbreak in human then to animals?
Yeah, so something we call it as reverse zoonosis. These are true, because human to animal, certain zoonotic diseases cannot exist without human sources. Like for example, tinea, solium, tinea saginata, etc. Because humans are the definitive host. So that apart from that, there are certain diseases like tuberculosis. Tuberculosis one of the major diseases in humans. So when especially in developing countries, nearly lakhs every minute we have 2 cases of tuberculosis. So these people are in constant interactions with the animals. So the milker who milks the animal, if he is having tuberculosis, naturally what will happen is that he will transmit the disease to the animals. So that is possible. So it's not that the disease we get only from the animals. There are equal chances that the humans also transmit the disease to the animals, because of the living conditions, and the spillover events are occurring more frequently in those lines. There are a couple of examples which we can give: brucellosis and things like that.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor. I'm gaining like a new knowledge about the questions. Maybe from my friends like Mariam or Afnis, if you have any questions, I also welcome you to share your question as well.
Right. Anisa, you're from which university? Are you from?
Oh,
Anisa?
Afnis. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
me or
You're from which college or which university? Like.
oh, I'm from Indonesia, Dr. Prejit.
Well, okay. So you have a very Indohun, no? I think Indonesia University,
Yes,
One Health University.
yes,
Like,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
that's a wonderful.
Exactly. They have like some, communication workshop, and it's very,
Yeah.
beneficial for students. All right. Maybe like as I also share these questions to Dr. Laura, but I would love to know your opinion about like how students can, contribute in One Health like in a practical way, because like we always share like the knowledge with our our ability, but if you have any other opinion how we can contribute in One Health, Dr. Bridget.
Yeah, students can contribute a lot. It's not like, uh, of course, Dr. Laura has mentioned most of the things, especially the way the advocacy part works on. But apart from that, even students can, like promote activities like planting trees, the simple activities, planting trees. Go to school students and teach them what is hand hygiene is. See, and people even in schools nowadays, they whenever they go and wash their hands, they just take a soap, wash it, and come out. So that attitude should change. We need to tell them what exactly is hand hygiene, what are the methods we have to go for it. Those things like planting trees, hand hygiene, then conducting some events, vaccination camps and events where make people aware about what are the hazards of zoonotic diseases which society has to pay over a couple of years. The younger generation has to play. I mean, these are the things like we need to do. Uh, and also commemorating events like this. No, we in our university also we have a IVSA code unit. They are very active, and last year also they won some One Health Day award and all. So that 1 month they entirely concentrated on promoting One Health concept. Local channels. They went to the local channels. They taught them. They delivered some lectures on rabies and things like that. How can be controlled? So if you are dedicated enough to the cause, definitely you can make a change in this world.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It's very like special message for us. Maybe if there is no question for all the attendees, I would love to close the sessions with Dr. Prejit. Uh, we are very honored to have you in these sessions in this webinar, because like we gain a lot of insight and new perspective, Dr. Prejit. And thank you very much for accepting our invitations.
Thank you.
And also, thank you very much, Doctor. We hope to have another opportunity to discuss with you in the future. And have a nice evening, I would say, in India. Thank you, Doctor. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
All right. To all the attendees, we have like information regarding tomorrow's sessions. So about tomorrow's session, we will have two speakers like today. So we will discuss with Dr. Indah. For the time, we will have the sessions in 12 until 1 UTC. And sorry, 12 p.m. Until 1 p.m. UTC. And then the second session, we will have the session with Dr. Herman Berkema. The session will start it in 5 p.m. UTC. So make sure to take a note on that. And we hope to see you tomorrow, guys. See you guys. Thank you very much for attending the sessions.